China is going to pump Bitcoin, and not just that, the entire financial market. And now I have the proof. Yes, you heard that right. Even though Bitcoin is currently being sold off and could easily drop down to 110,000 US dollars here. On top of that, we had the Russian central bank, which is apparently on the verge of introducing Bitcoin as a reserve asset. We have Michael Saylor's latest financial instrument, which is oversubscribed. People are practically beating down his door. That means the demand for Bitcoin at the institutional level is still unbroken. It's absolutely huge here. He could now, in one go, buy almost 20,000 more Bitcoin. And we have new massive purchases from Bitcoin treasury companies, who are just snapping up more and more Bitcoin, one after another. But above all, this whole story with China and Russia is really intense. We're seeing more and more big players. Just last night, I made a video about how an insider from China leaked that China is watching very closely what's happening in the US, what they're planning to do with Bitcoin. Before we dive right in, smash that like button down below for higher prices, for new all-time highs, for new records, for freedom, and for love. And let's quickly go through these purchases before we get to China and Russia. Zenler Scientific just bought another 175 Bitcoin. H100 picked up another 117 Bitcoin. And Genius Group bought 20 Bitcoin. We're just seeing more and more people buying Bitcoin here. And by the way, Michael Saylor also went big again here. That definitely needs to be mentioned. Let me just draw that in here. Michael Saylor is expected to buy even more, for about, $2 billion worth of additional Bitcoin. Initially, an extra 500 million was planned here, so it's basically oversubscribed. Oversubscribed. What am I even saying? The demand for the fixed income securities of the Bitcoin treasury company remains high. This is basically the world's first treasury Bitcoin stablecoin, which Michael Saylor announced here with STRC, his new program, Preferred Shares. And that's honestly a pretty wild story. But now it gets really exciting, because now we're heading over to China, and this could really send the price soaring. But also important, please, no smart aleck comments, no Bratwurst remarks down below like, oh, watched your video. So what is Bitcoin? It's still not at 180,000 US dollars. Yeah, I get it. Something is happening now that, in the medium term, will lead to all stock markets, all crypto markets, and of course Bitcoin, clearly rising across the board. First, this right here. Understand this. M2 money supply is at a new all-time high. And now we can look at, okay, what's the reason for that? We've now seen that the ECB hasn't lowered interest rates any further for the time being. Okay, the Federal Reserve isn't lowering interest rates at the moment either. Alright, so it can't really be because of the USA. But now, pay attention. Let's take a look. And just yesterday, I had an insider from China who actually said, hey, the Chinese are watching Bitcoin very closely. And now we have Mike Novogratz here. And he's about to give us the proof of why China is going to pump the markets.
Hey, Mike Novogratz, and I'm going to right now, without having the name of the next Fed chairman, that we already have a shadow Fed chair. That we know come May of 2026, there will be a different individual in that seat who is likely, very likely, highly likely to push for lower interest rates. Now, the question is, will that person unto themselves be able to do that? I think that's an opening question. What do you think?
So first of all, it's really important here. The reporter is still talking about the Federal Reserve, saying that we have a shadow, basically a shadow central bank, because we know for sure that next year things are going to take off massively. Starting in May, Jerome Powell will be replaced here. Then the money printing presses will be fired up massively, and the markets will be pumped up. But that's the long-term outlook. But right now, we're still in China. And listen to what Mike Novogratz says about why what's expected to happen in the US, the big print, could actually happen sooner in China, or rather, will happen there first.
And I think that's why gold is breaking out to new highs, silver is breaking into high, Bitcoin is on a tear, the yen curve is steep.
Everything is at new all-time highs. Gold, Bitcoin, silver.
Trades are working, they're going to continue to work. Guess what? We now have China joining the party with probably in my career, the biggest effort they've ever had at reflation. They've actually now made it part of monetary policy to reflate, as stated policy. And so I just think you've got the two biggest economies, one who's going to pressure rates lower, even if they shouldn't go lower, and the other one who's saying we need to reflate. And so you want to stay long the inflation trades, Wouldn't the Citibank chairman way back, you want to dance till the music stops? The music is still playing on these inflation trays.
Well, man, did you guys hear that? Crazy, crazy. They're talking about reflation here. We need to take a look at what that actually means in a moment. And on top of that, he says that the Fed will, of course, also massively fire up the money printing press here. But now, pay attention, reflation here in China. I went ahead and looked up the definition for you. So here, ChatGPT says, in simple terms, when prices have fallen, when there's deflation or economic growth is stalling, central banks and governments reflation the economy to generate inflation again, basically to inflate it. So what's happening here is that they want to create inflation. That means when you reflation the markets, it means you want to go from a low level. So from deflation into inflation, yes, that's the goal. And what does it mean when you notice they're reflationing? You don't really hear that word much here in the West. Let me know down in the comments if you've ever heard that word before. Reflation. What happens when you want to do that? How do you do it? Typically, by cutting interest rates, okay. Quantitative easing, okay. Super bullish. Every time quantitative easing has happened here historically, Bitcoin has absolutely skyrocketed. Tax breaks, government stimulus programs, for example, infrastructure investments, and all of that is coming. We've already had some announcements from China. For example, that the bank's fractional reserve requirements are going to be relaxed, and that there are plans to roll out helicopter money-style measures. And all of this can, of course, be very, very powerful for an economy in the short term. But in the long run, it can lead to bubbles in stocks, real estate, and all kinds of assets. It can massively increase government debt, and it can lead to massive inflation, especially when combined with stagnation. In other words, stagflation. And yes, for the price of Bitcoin, it's absolutely huge. I don't know if something like this is really good for an economy in the long run. When you intervene in the economy this much, first we get inflation, then we get deflation, then we do things one way, then another. But in any case, I found what he said here to be extremely explosive. And he also said, on the other side, we have the US, which is putting pressure to get interest rates down. That means the US is pushing to lower interest rates, and China is pushing to basically inflate the whole system. I mean, you just have to put 2 and 2 together here. That's also why I say, hey, hit the subscribe button below, subscribe to the channel, so you don't miss out on this kind of information. Because before the big announcements go out officially, you already have the insider news here, you already have the news. Okay, now you all know what's coming in the US. You all know that as soon as Jerome Powell is gone, interest rates will drop massively. You all know what China is planning here. You also know that China is definitely keeping an eye on Bitcoin. You can just see that if you read between the lines here, and then you wouldn't be positioned incorrectly right now, like being short on Bitcoin or something right now. So, shout out to all the Bitcoin shorters out there. Have fun, stay in core. And then, on top of that, news like this comes along. Here, the Russian central bank is considering approving Bitcoin for an investment fund worth 1.5 trillion rubles due to high demand. The next global reserve asset is coming. And here, Russia could be the pioneer. I mean, yeah, it could be that this news is a bit exaggerated, pulled out from X, of course. And here, Russia is immediately being declared as a reserve asset. But hey, investment funds that are now trying to massively accumulate Bitcoin through the central bank, or apparently, they need approval from the central bank for that. I don't know exactly how that works in Russia. Feel free to correct me in the comments below if you know exactly how it works, but it seems that they need approval here, and the central bank is reviewing it. And if they're reviewing it, then at the very least, they have to deal with Bitcoin here. Sure, it could be that this is still a long way off, but usually you only conduct such a review if there's already some kind of motivation or intention behind it. Just like, for example, the Czech National Bank, which is also considering adding Bitcoin to its balance sheet. There's already a certain positive outcome being put out there, because, for instance, the ECB isn't considering adding Bitcoin to its balance sheet. The ECB isn't even thinking about it. That means, if you're already considering adding certain assets to the balance sheet or allowing assets, then usually, in the back of your mind, you're already planning to introduce that asset. Otherwise, you just do what the ECB does, put out some kind of hate papers, make weird statements, and say things like, yeah, Bitcoin is really bad, Bitcoin is only for criminals, Bitcoin this, Bitcoin that, Bitcoin whatever. And that's why one thing is really, really important here. You always have to keep this in mind, especially now that the big players are moving into Bitcoin. A lot of people think, okay, we're too late for Bitcoin. No, we're actually not too late for Bitcoin at all. Just check out this awesome statement here. Here Theodoros writes, "You gave me the motivation, and for that, a big thank you, my friend. As a retiree, I started buying Satoshis, and I will keep doing it. And that's just the thing. You have to realize that we're in a historic window of opportunity right now. Anyone who positions themselves well now will probably come out of this whole scenario very, very well. Anyone who isn't well positioned now, just think about this. They're talking about reflation here. They're talking about massive stimulation of the financial markets. The money supply is going to absolutely explode. Anyone who isn't prepared here is going to have a massive problem. And the thing is, the Titanic is sinking. That means the Titanic, that's the fiat system. It's already got a few holes. It's now slowly going under. Not quickly, but it's going under slowly. And now there are lifeboats, and there are just 5, 6, 7 boats. There are stocks, there are bonds, there are real estate, and so on. And now, let's say there are 7 boats. Gold and silver can also be counted among them. And out of these 7 boats, there is exactly 1 boat that doesn't have a leak. All the other lifeboats are indeed better than the Titanic, meaning they sink more slowly than the Titanic, but they also go under, because the bond market is leaking just the same. Since the bond market doesn't provide positive real returns, the real estate market is leaking, because the real estate market often fails to beat inflation. The real estate market is leaking when you have third-party risk here, and when you don't have a flexible asset. The stock market is leaking because it's overvalued, and we've seen it. In the last video, I even showed how the S&P 500, adjusted for M2 money supply, has basically made no gains at all over the last 100 years. That means the stock market is leaking too. You won't go completely under, but you'll just make progress very, very slowly. And the only thing that doesn't have a leak here, the only thing that's not intrinsically broken, the only thing that doesn't drain your purchasing power here, is Bitcoin. Okay, that's not entirely true either, because with stocks, gold, and so on, you can more or less keep your head above water, but it's more like just staying afloat and not really surfing over the water, like riding a wave where you just go along with it. And that's something really, really important for you to take away. And I know I've already annoyed you with this several times, but I have to do it again, because right now, there are just such incredible discounts here at TREZOR. You can currently get the TREZOR Safe 5 and TREZOR Safe 3 wallets here with a full 20% discount. If you enter the code D20P, all uppercase, D20P, and select a MyTREZOR Model 1, you'll get it here with a 60% discount. For that, you need to enter the code D60P here. And very important, everything in uppercase. And this only works if you click the link below. That means you can get a TREZOR wallet here for just 20 euros. Earlier, someone wrote in the chat, "Hey, I just bought 5 or 6 of these wallets here to give away, to pass on." And someone wrote in the comments, "Pro tip, set the site to dollars, then it gets cheaper, or better yet, switch to Zimbabwe dollars or something, some super inflated shitcoin, and it gets cheaper." That last part was, of course, a joke. In any case, go check it out. If you still want to buy Bitcoin, I'll put a link below to 21 Bitcoin, which is simple and secure for buying Bitcoin. Guys, I'm signing off right here. I'm wearing the 21 Bitcoin t-shirt. I'm signing off here. Bullish, hyper bullish, Bitcoin, peace out.